Welcome to the CDBG Advisory Committee special meeting. Today, let's see, what day is today? October 23rd. So with that, we have roll call.
Committee members Armenian,
Present.
Caribbean,
Here.
Manukian is absent, Vice Chair Avedisian is absent, Chair Quinones Gabrielian.
Here.
Okay, the agenda for the October 23rd, 2023 special meeting of the CDBG Advisory Committee was posted on or before Friday, October 20th, 2023 on the bulletin board outside City Hall. Item 2 is minutes. At A, approval of the minutes of the August 28th, 2023 CDBG Advisory Committee special meeting.
Excellent. With that, may I have a motion to approve the minutes of August 28th?
I move to approve.
Second.
Good.
Okay.
I'm just going to make one request for a clarification under, let's see, where was it at? It was the fiscal year, I believe, was incorrect. It said 21, fiscal year 21-21, and it was for the reallocation of the Hominid men. Where was that?
There's the reprogramming
Reprogramming.
of 21 to 21 is what you're
Right,
saying. It should say
exactly.
21, 22.
Should it say 21-22 or should it say 20-21?
Oh, on page
5
page 5, Ms.
at the top.
Yes.
It
Page
says
5.
fiscal year 2021.
2022 or
It should be
2021?
21-22.
Okay, thank you. So
I'll make
with,
that correction. And
right, with that correction, may I please have roll call?
committee members Armenian,
Yes.
Caribbean,
Yes.
Manukian is absent, Vice Chair Avedisian is absent, Chair Quinones Gabrielian.
Yes.
Thank you. Item 3 is oral communications. We don't have any cards or callers. Item 4, action items at A is preliminary proposed fiscal year 2024-2025 CDBG funding allocation plan by funding category and reprogramming of CDBG city CIP funds from program year 2018 and 2021. At 1 is a motion to reprogram city capital improvement project funding in the amount of $370,000 from 2018 Pacific Natural Grass and reprogram to 2021 Pacific Park Splash Pad. And at 2 is a motion to approve the preliminary proposed fiscal year 2024-2025 CDBG funding allocation plan by funding category.
Okay, thank you. I'll turn it over to our staff member, Maggie.
Excellent. Thank you. Chair Quinones, Gabrielian, members of the advisory committee. We have 2 motions to present to you today. One is the preliminary proposed CDBG funding allocation plan, but it also includes reprogramming of city CIP funds. So let me go ahead and turn it over to our PowerPoint presentation. Again, we have 2 recommendations today. We'd like to get the reprogramming of our $370,000 from 2018 Pacific Natural Grass Project moved to 2021 Pacific Park Splash Pad Project. And we'll get deeper into why we need to reprogram those funds. And then, of course, to approve the proposed funding allocation plan for the upcoming fiscal year of 24-25. So a little bit of news out of Washington. Currently, Congress has passed a continuing resolution through November 17th of this year to avoid a government shutdown. If you've been watching the news, we're still sort of waiting on how that'll all play out by our March meeting. So we are anticipating that our appropriations levels for our program will remain pretty much the same once that final budget is passed. So we're estimating pretty much the same funding as we received this year, about $1.7 million. Now, a continuing resolution also means that staff may not be able to present you with a final budget at the March meeting. And if that's the case, we'll most likely present you with a contingency plan in order to finalize the funding recommendations for the upcoming year. So we'll get more into that in March. Hopefully, if they pass it, I think we should be getting our allocations on time. So just to give you a breakdown of where we stand with funding in 24-25, as I had mentioned, we have about $1.7 million in our base allocation, our entitlement that we get. We also have $146,795 in an undesignated fund balance from 2020 and 2021. So we will be presenting that to the committee. Now, again, remember, this is only used for capital improvement projects. And then, as you recall, at our August 28th meeting, we have Catholic Charities had canceled and returned $380,788 from two of their projects, their roof project and their Glendale Community Center project. So all in all, we have $2,227,000 estimated to be allocated in the upcoming year. So just to give you a breakdown of that $2.2 million, 20% of just the entitlement, that $1.7 million, would go to program administration. So we're looking at $340,000. $255,000 is anticipated to go to public social services with that 15% cap. And then we have $1.6 million. That 1.6 includes, of course, the undesignated fund balance and the return funds as well. So we are asking that $762,583 be set aside for community agencies, $870,000 be set aside for city pre-designated projects, and we have two of them for you. The first is $500,000 for the PAC Edison, it's Pacific Edison Artificial Turf Replacement Project, and then $370,000 for the Pacific Natural Grass Project. So let me get into the PAC Edison Artificial Turf Replacement Project. This is our pre-designated project that we present before you. It's at 501 South Pacific. This is where we do most of our projects for CDBG. It's at the lower left-hand corner. It's a replacement project that is estimated to cost $2 million. We're requesting $500,000 from CDBG. We already have $150,000 that's been allocated from the city's Measure S funds. Now, this project was installed in 2014. It's pretty much outlived its life. It's ready for renovation at this point and replacement. The field is a joint use project, so it's a joint use project with Glendale Unified School District. So therefore, the cost of this project will be shared with GUSD. The project is currently in design phase, and it's anticipated to be completed in spring of 2024. To get more into the reprogramming of the city CIP funds, so we are asking to reprogram $370,000 from 2018. We have money in 2018 for the Pacific Natural Grass Project. We're asking to move that to the 2021 Pacific Park Splash Pad Project. Now, why are we asking to move that money? Well, it's in response to HUD. HUD is asking the city to prepare a workout plan, a CDBG workout plan, because we are untimely in spending our CDBG funds. So we have more than that 1.5 times the current entitlement that we receive that's remaining in our account, our line of credit. So therefore, we're not timely in spending down funds, and we want to be by the deadline date, and that deadline date is April 30th, 2024. Now, if we move these $370,000 in funds, the splash pad project is ready to go, and we know that that's going into construction next month, in a few weeks. So we know we'll be able to expend and draw down those funds by the April 30th deadline. Now, the Pacific Natural Grass Project is currently in design phase, and it's not going to be ready for construction, so we won't be able to draw down comfortably. So that's why we are requesting to move those funds and backfill.
Can I ask
Sure.
because it's 2018 funding that we're moving, reallocating, we get 5 years to spend it. So is that April, the additional 4 months, is that like a grace period, or we're already into a grace period, or?
Chair Quinones Gabrieli and members of the advisory committee, I know this is confusing because we're always trying to spend down our funds so we meet the Treasury, the U.S. Treasury grab, as we like to call it. This is not that 7-year period of performance.
Okay.
This is the timeliness. So we have we look at it in two components. The first one, of course, is that 7-year period of performance, and this is nothing to do with that because we still have a lot of time to spend down 2018 funds. Our concern is the untimeliness. So each year, HUD evaluates our line of credit, and they notice that we are way over that 1.5 number. And now we've been over that 2 years in a row, so now they're asking for a workout plan. And the workout plan that we proposed to them, and we will be submitting next week, would be, and if this is approved, would include this $370,000. As long as we can spend down, and I believe it's about $4.4 million, we anticipate all the projects that are currently in the pipeline, if we can spend all of that down, then we'd be under that 1.5 rule.
Okay,
This is kind of where we're at this point.
thank you.
So what we're requesting to do is to allocate 370, so if we are taking 370 from Pacific Natural Grass, we'd like to put it back to Pacific Natural Grass in 24-25. So we're taking the 2018 funds and requesting 370,000 in 24-25 funds to go back to the natural grass project because we shifted funds. Hope that explains. I can move on if you have any questions.
Just quickly on the $2 million that it was estimated, is that for the entire park project or just the turf was $2 million?
Commissioner Caribbean, committee member Caribbean, the $2 million is the estimated cost for the replacement of the artificial turf. So just the turf. There's no other component of that site that's being included.
That's a 10-year lifespan approximately?
Generally, yes. With artificial turf, we look at it as with a 10-year lifespan with regular maintenance.
About $16,000 a month.
To be able to set aside.
Yeah, I mean, that's the cost relatively.
With this project, it is going to be a shared cost with GUSD because it is a joint use field. So once we get more information and more concrete numbers as far as this is an estimate, obviously. So we're putting together the specs right now. And then once we go out to bid and have a more concrete number, we will be going back to GUSD and also asking them to share a portion of that. We will look at the joint use as far as what percent of the time is being used by the city versus the school district, and then we'll split the cost. So the project, as you could tell, is not currently fully funded. We're just trying to set aside a portion of the city's share of the cost in the future in 24-25 to be able to contribute our half. I don't have the most recent use of the percentage breakdown between GUSD and the city. I know it says one thing in the contract, but over time the use changes. So we're gonna have to recalculate that percentage, but for sure it'll be at a minimum 50-50 split, if not 60-40, depending on who uses it more.
Annual renewal contract between GUSD or 10-year contract or?
No, so we do have the city has a master contract with GUSD, and then each site that is joint use has a specific contract, and it's usually not renewed annually. There is an annual meeting that happens, and individuals from both sides of the GUSD and the city meet regularly to discuss it. And we only update the contract if there's major changes. Like the last time we updated it was when we changed the use of the playground because it was leading to some maintenance issues and concerns. So originally the playground was part of the joint use, but then we changed it where we closed it off and the city doesn't use the playground at the school on the school site anymore. So major changes like that will modify the contract, but we don't necessarily go in to modify the use percentage, or at least we haven't historically.
Thank you.
I have a question.
Go ahead.
Okay, I know that Pacific Edison is greatly utilized, a lot. This particular field, what is it used for, and is it fully utilized?
This particular field is used majority for soccer, but the school district also uses it for their PE and for their programs. Like the city will use it for our One Glendale program or after-school youth program. We have soccer, we have flag football that also happens on that field, but majority of the use is soccer use by both leagues, and private renters.
We collect rent from the leagues?
They rent from the city, yes.
On the GUSD, do we know if they've budgeted for their portion, whatever it's going to be?
At this time, no, I don't know that it's budgeted or whether they're putting aside money annually for it, so I don't have that information right now.
So if that's the case, I'm worried a little bit about we're designating funds, we have to spend funds in a certain amount of time, but it seems like we're on the hook for the whole 2 million in terms of guaranteeing that this project's going to be done, because we don't know what GUSD is doing or has planned to do.
Chair Quinones, Gabriel, and members of the committee, I do know that they are aware that they will be paying for a share of the cost of replacing the field, and that's part of the joint use agreement. So if anything, the city might front the money if it's something they can't pay right away, but it definitely will be reimbursed to the city. So it's not something that the city will have to front and only do, because it is part of an agreement, and they are on the hook essentially for their share of the cost. So they are aware, they will be budgeting it, but the cost will fully not be incurred till 24-25. So they've got the next budget cycle to be able to allocate the funds for the project as well. But it is something that I know Onig, our director, has discussed with GUSD, and they are aware of the project and the need for the replacement because it has outlived its life. So we have to replace it. And GUSD for sure knows that they will be reimbursing the city for their share of the cost.
And so since the CDBG amounts of the 2 million don't add up to 2 million, the balance comes out of city and Parks and Rec budgets?
Yes, so the portion that we're allocating now is just the CDBG portion, but once we know what the full cost is, we will have to go back to City Council to either allocate grant funds if we're successful in securing grant funds, or request for the difference to come from the city's general fund for our portion of the cost.
Okay, 2 more questions. This workout plan, can you explain again why it is that we've not met deadlines according to HUD?
Great question. The workout plan, Chair Quinones, Gabriel, and members of the advisory committee, committee member Armenian, the CDBG workout plan comes after 2 cycles. If we have been untimely in 2 cycles, and we have been in 2021 and 22, I don't want to paint it as, it's not as dire as it seems, but it is. Absolutely. We want to be very, we want to spend down our funds, and we want to do what's right. But this is a national problem. It's not just a Glendale issue. We actually met with the HUD district director who came out from Washington, D.C. to tell us it's not just us, but they wanted to know how we were proactively working on this. And what we explained to them is we basically did what we do here, is we laid out every single project we know is going into construction. We know what the drawdown periods are, and that's how we've laid out this plan for HUD. We're going to be submitting this workout plan, showing them from today till April 30th how we will spend down that $4.4 million. And that not only includes CIP projects, that also includes public social services projects that we anticipate at the 6-month point. It also includes staff costs because program administration is part of it. But what our fear was, we're trying to be really conservative. We also want to make sure we have a cushion just in case we're not timely and an invoice doesn't go through by April 30th. that if we can secure that $370,000 in addition to what we have anticipated, we know we can comfortably get to that number. And that's really where the discussion came from of moving those splash pad money versus the natural grass money, because we knew that in November, once that starts, that's going to be spent down immediately. So I hope that answers your question. It is technically under review right now because we have to hold on to it until all the decisions are made. And if they are made and you do approve it, that will be part of the workout plan as well.
Okay. And final question, I know there was a lot of controversy around artificial turf. Are we past that? Is that all settled at this point?
Chair Quinones, Gabrielian, members of the committee. So out of the 5 artificial turf projects that we did receive approval to work on 3 turf projects, one being Sports Complex Field 3 and the other one Fremont Park. The other 3, the joint projects with Glendale Unified, we have asked to put a hold on those projects, to cancel the projects actually. And then the Pacific Park multi-use field, which is the Little League field, we will be renovating that as natural turf.
Okay, but this particular project that we're talking about is out of those, like, doesn't have any restrictions in terms of moving forward with artificial turf?
As of today, no, because it's replacement. We're not adding new artificial turf to our assets. It's basically a replacement project.
Got it. Thank you.
Oh, that was it? huh?
That ends it.
That concludes it. So then we are open for a motion to approve the recommendation from staff, which is alternative 1. Approve the preliminary proposed CDBG funding allocation plan by funding category as proposed by staff, and the reprogramming of the city CIP funding in the amount of $370,000 from 2018 Pacific Natural Grass to 2021 Pacific Park Splash Pad. May I have a motion, please?
Make a motion as stated.
Second that.
Perfect. Any additional questions or discussion?
No.
Roll call, please.
Committee members Armenian,
Yes.
Caribbean,
Yes.
Manukian is absent, Vice Chair Avedisian is absent, Chair Quinones Gabrielian.
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay.
Next is item 4B, fiscal year 2024-2025 CDBG program priorities. That one is a motion to approve the fiscal year 2024-2025 CDBG program priorities.
Yes, staff, please.
Yeah, we have a short PowerPoint presentation for the committee regarding the 24-25 program priorities. The recommendation is to approve the 24-25 CDBG program priorities that are upcoming. Just to give you a little background on the development of the program priorities, traditionally we offer an in-person community meeting at a public meeting location, usually at Pacific Park Community Center, where residents would be invited to provide their direct input. We did have direction from our committee to have alternative ways of gathering community input, and this year we had multiple platforms of assessing community need, and those included some notice of community input. We did let the newspaper know at Glendale Independent. We put in an ad, a public notice. We had social media information on the community meeting through Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter, our department website and calendar. We have a Community Services and Parks newsletter. We also invited our nonprofit email distribution list agencies to have their clients attend. We partnered with our city manager's office to get the word out as well. And then our next door, our CSP email distribution list. We have a separate distribution list with our Community Services and Parks Department. And then, of course, we had a next door posting as well. So the platforms that we used for community input, we had an in-person community meeting on October 4th. We had 3 people attend that meeting and participate. And then the next day, on October 5th, we had a virtual community meeting. We had 1 person attend that meeting via Microsoft Teams. And then we offered email comments from October 2nd through the 6th. We had 2 email comments that were received and recorded. And then we also offered telephone call-in, and we had no telephone comments received or recorded. So therefore, we're proposing that the 24-25 Annual Action Plan program priorities are in line with our consolidated plan 2020-2025 program priorities. They're pretty much in sync. These are not in any alphabetical order or any ranking. Again, homeless services, public facilities, public social services, public and neighborhood improvements, and housing, and each with a subtopic. So they're pretty much the same. This is the 5th year. 2024, 2025 will be the 5th year and the last year of our current consolidated plan. Next year, we will be doing a brand new consolidated 5-year plan, which means we'll have a lot more meetings, more outreach, surveys, and ways to gather input. We also looked at data analysis, and we looked at the American Community Survey. This is the analysis of 2022 U.S. Census data for 1-year estimates, and we updated our list of key demographic indicators. Interestingly enough, the city's population has actually gone down. We're at 189,221 as of 2022. That's a 3,145 person decrease from last year's 192,000. Our poverty levels remain the same at 13.9% of Glendale families being below poverty level, while 14.1% of LA County is listed as below poverty level. We have 17.9% of Glendale's population who are children under the age of 18 in Glendale, with LA County's average being 20.4%. As for seniors, there are 34,060 persons 65 years or older living in Glendale. That makes up 18% of Glendale residents. And then, interestingly enough, median rent in Glendale is $1,835 compared to $1,653 in Los Angeles County. This is the first year of doing this for 5 years that the rent actually went down for the first time, interestingly enough. So we're not sure if that's true or not, but that's what the numbers tell us this year. Program priority determinations. Program priorities continue to be in line with our 5-year consolidated plan. This is the last year of our current 5-year plan, like I had mentioned. Residents, their feedback by way of community meetings, email results showed that affordable housing that's always the #1 reason for participation of affordable housing concerns related to limited resources and, of course, rent increases. So, well, there you go. And then parks and open space development, improvement, and services continue to be a priority. Residents also expressed a need for childcare services, homeless services, mental health services, and youth and senior programs in Glendale. So those were some topics that came up. That concludes my presentation. If you have any questions on program priorities for 24-25.
Questions? I have a question. I have a couple of questions, actually. The distribution list that you referred to, does it include homeowners associations, renters associations, service clubs, maybe who, work at serving the community, all of that?
I would actually refer to Iris for that, since she handles our CSP distribution list.
Okay.
Sure. Chair Quinones, Gabriela, and members of the committee. It potentially does, but basically it's a list that people can sign up for. They can subscribe to receive announcements and the newsletter that the department puts out. So it's not one that where we sign up or add to our list, but people need to actively register for it.
And is it like against a policy for us to reach out instead of waiting for them to come in? Because I think it's 7 people, right, that gave us feedback, and we did not send out a survey this year. I mean, last year we had almost 200, I think, folks that responded to the survey, and, you know, we got a ranking instead of just an alphabetical order of community needs. So just, I think we need to do a little more digging and searching out the folks that serve those community needs, right? A little bit more and go beyond the nonprofits, go maybe the service clubs themselves, maybe the, you know, the homeowners and the renters. They see the need around them, so, okay. I especially because next year is going to be our 5-year look, comprehensive look. So, okay. Then the other thing is, I know that you provided the list to us in alphabetical order, but is there a ranking at all, or somewhere, or is it the last list that you
Sure.
showed that you?
Chair Quinones, Gabrielian, members of the advisory committee, we did rank the program priorities last year, and we were asked to not put them in order of importance to the people who had done the surveys. And you wanted to
Really?
keep them pretty much generic in the sense that to keep it as, what's the word I'm looking for? I guess level,
Meaningless.
level
No, I'm
as
sorry.
possible.
I'm just, because I just think, to me, it played a big part knowing that, you know, what we are asking the community to tell us what they need, and we have limited, we never have enough money. So we're trying to give the community what they need the most. And I thought maybe that's, the ranking would help. I don't know. It just, to me, it's more meaningful if the community says, I need more of this, I need more of that, you know, when we have limited resources. Okay.
Chair Quinones Gabrielian, last year when we did do it and got the results, the committee chose not to include those in the RFPs, so that's why we didn't go out and rank them again this year. So if that's something that you wish to do as a committee, we could consider bringing it back for future years. But because it wasn't considered or included in the RFP last year, we didn't go out and ask for the community to rank it again this year. But to your point of more outreach for the consolidated plan, we definitely will be working with the consultant, and the goal in general, the consolidated, the con plan, the 5-year con plan is usually more, there's more outreach involved, which we as staff don't have the capacity to do every year for the annual plans. That doesn't mean that like the homeowner associations or the generic emails that we can send out for notification can't be done. We definitely will if it wasn't already part of the list that we included. Some may have been, because we do have a standard list of emails. So some may have received it, but it's a matter of whether they then turn around and share it with their own members. So we definitely will put more effort to outreaching in more detail or more thoroughly to organizations and the public. Something that, you know, we've done in other years, as in previous years, and Maggie can speak to this, is, you know, attend larger community events like the Fall Festival or like the Cruise Night or something of that sort for the comp plan. We make more of the effort to go out and try to bring in, because it is a 5-year plan. So we want to hear more from more people than the people that, you know, the 5 that usually show up at the community meetings. But unfortunately, we don't have the staff capacity to go out and do that level of outreach for every single annual plan. We do our best to advertise it and hope that they do hear it. And at these meetings, we do ask them, well, how did you hear about it? What more can we do to make sure that you and your friends and neighbors and family know about these meetings? But we hear the same feedback, which is either social media or email or next door, and everybody hears it differently. So I think we will do more working with a consultant for next year's plan because it will be a 5-year plan. And maybe we can also incorporate, what more can we do that we haven't already considered for the annual plan to be able to bring in more people. Usually we do get more turnout with the virtual meetings. We were actually all shocked that only one person showed up for the virtual meeting, because we get at least 10 people for the virtual, because they don't have to drive anywhere. They don't have to leave the children. They can just hop on a computer and participate. But this year there was literally one person, and I think it was from one of our nonprofits. So it wasn't even like a community member. So we were a bit disappointed because we as staff put in a lot of work to hear from them. So our goal is to get feedback from more people because it helps you make those decisions. So and when I say we don't have staff capacity in the sense of like to go to every single event or to be able to, I think one year we even tabled at the GUSD back to school nights to be able to get the information out. So I think these are things that we will consider for the comp plan, and then try to see, which method seems to get that word out and be able to bring in more people. But the other thing is it's also important to keep in mind that the funds are to be used for low income and in the low income areas. So that's also where we try to do most outreach. Not that we don't want to hear from everybody in Glendale, but the funds are limited in the way that they could be used. So we don't necessarily want to outreach to the group that may want to use the funds in a way that we can't. In not the South Glendale or the low-income areas, because we really can't we can't spend the funds in that manner. So we're happy to take any, feedback and incorporate it for future years too, but we also we feel kind of stuck too, and Maggie can comment on that as well.
Yes.
Well, we felt this year there was one factor at play, and at least I've seen it before, and I always joke with staff about this, is whenever the Dodgers are in the playoffs or something, I always notice that we have less attendees. And unfortunately this year, the time frame was really bad on the world stage. So I think we feel sometimes when things are happening in the world, they do affect the community meetings. But to discuss the ranking order, as staff, we would recommend that the con plan be, again, level, and we just do a 5-year con plan, get all the information that we want. We shouldn't be ranking the con plan because it's a 5-year plan. So we let that remain fluid, but we can rank the action plan for the year 25, 26. So we can do that. So our recommendation would be, yes, we should rank the action plan, but not the con plan, because we want to keep that kind of fluid in when things happen. And then this year we noticed with the pandemic, so we saw changes in need.
I like that. I mean, what does the committee?
Yeah, I think that's great with the action plan, because knowing that year what's happening, what's need for that particular year, we can adjust according to that versus a 5-year plan, because every year has its own adjustments. But if I have questions?
Yes, I'm done.
Okay. On the comments, is from these 4 people, right? That's all there is. Just want to make sure all these comments are coming from those 4 people. A lot of comments here. Do we televise the meeting? Did we do it on YouTube? I don't know that part. Or
Committee member Garibin, we do not televise, but we do take notes. So we have staff there, multiple staff there. Actually, staff is there to help translate in English, Armenian, and Spanish. This year we didn't need translators, so everyone chipped in and wrote down all the comments. Even with a small group of in-person attendees, they had a lot to say, and we stayed there until 9 p.m., so it was a very constructive meeting. Very interesting results, as you could see. But of course, we want to hear from everyone. So
Was the meeting, but live anywhere on social media, anything?
it
Nothing?
is not. It is not.
And
The
we-
virtual.
I mean, is there restrictions or you just didn't get to?
Chair Quinones Gabrielian, members of the committee, the challenge with televising it is the way that we bring in feedback, it would be really hard to engage or to gather all of that feedback, because generally at these meetings, we break into groups, and we also have the option of breaking out into either Spanish speaker, Armenian speaker, or the English speaker, and then there's sets of questions. So staff addresses the questions, and then we try to engage the public in providing feedback based on the questions that are being asked. I think it would be really difficult. We can televise it in the sense of, like, if it's something that, you know, the public's interested in watching, but I think it's more of the input we're looking for. So we really need them to engage and be able to comment on and provide their input based on each of the categories. So I don't think it would be successful if we televised it in that manner, because it doesn't allow us to engage one-on-one with the speakers and be able to, and for them to be able to engage with one another, because oftentimes somebody says something and somebody else feeds off of that and says, oh yeah, you know, that happens in my neighborhood too, or yes, my neighbor has been dealing with a similar issue. And the categories are general to all city services, not just, you know, community services and parks. And so we want to hear about neighborhoods that need improvements, streets that need improvements, safety issues, economic development, job related. So, you know, it varies. It's not specific to one category. So we find that, and historically, I think the best outcome or the best results are from in-person, because, like I said, people are able to engage with one another and hear from each other. The virtual, I think, is good too, in the sense of it's an alternate option. But again, if it would be really difficult if you televised it and then allowed for everybody to call in, we wouldn't be able to document or get the right type of responses and the questions that are being addressed personally. So that's the reason why we don't televise it. There's no restrictions per se, but we don't think that method will
That makes
get
sense,
us the
televising it,
feedback
but on
that-
social media, you can actually go live, even with the small groups that you're gonna have, and people can actually put in their comments and statements or questions live, what's happening with it through social media of one kind or another. X, for example, it could be live there, and the groups can, and you guys can, actually communicate with the public on social media and have that happening. I mean, something that happens all the time with social media. People go live and people start making comments or questions and response to them. A lot of people respond to that.
One thing that I think we heard from the 4 people that were in attendance is how just in general, like HUD and the guidelines for CDBG, it's so much information and so hard to retain and understand, even with an in-person presentation and listening to it. The details of, you know, what are the funds, what can they be used for, and, you know, what kind of feedback we're looking for from them. So I think if the people in attendance or just the general community doesn't hear the presentation as to what is the intent of the funds and what are they to be used for, we feel that the type of answers we're going to get are not going to necessarily be how the funds should be spent, but just general city issues or general concerns that they might have about whatever it might be. So personally, I fear that might also lead to, like, if you open it up on social media and you go live and you have an exchange, that if they weren't there in the beginning of the presentation and they weren't watching the whole thing and they hop on towards the middle or the end, they're not necessarily going to have an idea of what is the intent of the meeting and what type of information are we looking for from them. Not to say we can't try it or do it, but just kind of voicing, I think, you know, just our professional opinion on the type of responses we might get if the individuals don't hear the full presentation, which entails, because it's not just CDBG, it's also home funds and ESG funds. So each one on its own is complicated enough, but to then, combine them together, if the individuals don't hear the presentations, that might be a challenge. So something we can consider and talk about maybe with the consultant who's got more experience in managing public meetings and community outreach, and seeing if this is something that might work, and if it works for a larger plan, maybe we can try to see if it can be implemented for the smaller annual plans. But again, I think it's a matter of being able to document all the feedback in the right manner, and the type of feedback we're getting are specific to the funds and how they could be used.
Well, I appreciate, I think your response, but I think since we're trying to find, input, and we may not get much of it, we can at least get some more if we do go and rebroadcast it on social media, and maybe edit at the end and put in, for your comments go to, and put an email address or something like that, so that, they get an opportunity to see the entire discussion from the beginning all the way to the end. It's rebroadcast, and then a place to send their email. Something like that. Yes.
Just wanted to offer a thought. I think to the degree that we can partner, the city can partner with organizations that work in these areas to conduct some focus groups with the people that they serve. I think that's where we need the input from, because at the end of the day, we have to spend the money in a certain way in certain places in the city based on the demographic studies. So, getting input about, a park, let's say, that's not in anywhere near the areas where folks from these demographics might be less valuable. I'm not saying that like all parks aren't accessible to everyone, but for example, we know Pacific Park, right? We keep investing in it. We just talked about it before. We know it serves folks who qualify within these demographics that HUD requires us to serve. So for example, if we can even figure out who uses Pacific Community Center, who uses those facilities, who might be within the demographics of people that we want to seek their input on. Like, what else can we improve in Pacific Community Center? What else can we improve in South Glendale? I think it's got to be a much more specialized approach. Just doing a blanket, announcement to everyone, I think is not yielding. As much as I appreciate the efforts of staff, I think we got to go find the audience. And the reality is that audience that we're seeking is not typically, does not have the knowledge on how to engage in the public participation process. And so I don't even know we're reaching them, right, to invite them. So we got to find, maybe through the organizations that work with those parts of our community, to partner with them to conduct some focus groups of people who they are already serving, who fall within the demographics that we're trying to reach. I know there's a little bit of a delicate issue there, because they may be organizations that are also seeking the funding. So they're going to want to create, or just show the demand. But I think there's a way to probably anonymize it a little bit. Maybe they do the inviting, but they, as an organization, they don't participate. The city goes in and runs it, right? For example, Salvation Army, or even, like I said, you probably have some records of who uses Pacific Community Center, doing something there. I mean, we got to go and target it in those areas and go find our audience, because they're not going to, I don't think they're naturally going to know to come. They're not connected to the network that typically might be connected, your average citizen. So let's maybe look at focus groups as one way of going after specific parts of the city.
I have also ditto that recommendation. If we find out how much it would cost to conduct, at least 3 focus groups, maybe in 3 different areas, like you said, Pacific Community Center, the Adult Community Center, and one other place. So,
It would definitely have to be staff-led,
yes,
absolutely.
yes, and not that organization. So
No,
that it's
my
objective.
idea is just the organization helps us convene the people, but they're not part of the actual process beyond that.
Well, maybe, not one organization, maybe
Yeah.
maybe a place where several organizations go to, because they can stack the room.
And you could
Correct.
do it on public property, right, do it at Adult Recreation Pacific, but have the organizations help you convene the audience.
Chair Quinones Gabrielian, members of the committee member, Armenian, that is a great point. We will consider, and I think in emailing the community agencies, that's what we're hoping for, that they will bring their constituents to our meetings. But you're right, it doesn't seem to, either they're not able to get it out, or maybe the individuals are not interested in attending. We're not exactly sure, and we can follow up and find out from the agencies if they've tried to send outreach, unless Maggie, to respond to that now. The only thing I would urge us, and we definitely will keep that in mind, is to keep it general, the meetings, because they can't be specific to any one type of service that's being provided by any one organization. Otherwise, their feedback's going to be specific to that, which is why we try to keep it general, because in order to be fair and to hear from your community on where your needs are, if we convene, I guarantee you, if we convene a meeting at the Parks Department and say it's for soccer fields, we will pack it. And all your soccer users will tell you that you need soccer fields in Glendale. But we can't and don't want to do that, because otherwise it's going to be very specific to that topic and on hand. And you definitely will get these are great meetings for our soccer players to attend, but we don't advertise it as such. And so we just have to be careful to keep it very generic and open, because like I said, it's not just CDBG, it's home funds, ESG funds as well, but also all the various categories that we cover in the community meetings, from job placement to streets. So we want to hear, where should the funds be focused? Because you know what, there might be a year that people might, I'm not sure if they ever will, but there might be a year where people say, you know what, social services aren't important. Let's focus on our streets because our infrastructure is bad and that's what we need to improve. And that might be where the city and the committee wants to focus the funds too. I know it's kind of been mostly, parks, not necessarily parks, but also just social services in general has been specific to the categories that we've seen, but there might at some point be other categories of needs that might come up where your focus will change, and that's where the con plan, then the annual plans reassure us that, hey, your 5-year plan is still your 5-year plan, because there isn't something that has happened in the world that has shifted your needs in a way where you need to refocus them. So that is a great point, and we'll look at trying to partner with more of the agencies or the nonprofits or even the school to see if there's a meeting that's happening that we could maybe attend and partake, or be half that meeting to be able to get feedback. But again, it's got to be very general and not specific to the type of services or the service provided by any of the organizations, because otherwise the feedback you get are going to be specific to that organization, and then it's not necessarily going to be a fair community meeting to get general impact on where the annual plan should be focusing. So these are great inputs, and definitely taking notes for future years.
Okay. So based on our conversation here, do we agree that this is an action plan and it should be prioritized? The priorities should be prioritized? I'm asking my fellow commissioners for this action plan year,
Prioritized by who?
by ranking, by community input, by,
The community input is very thin.
for people.
we didn't have enough, right?
We didn't
Because
have enough
why
this
didn't we
year.
do the survey this year? I just wonder.
Because last year when we did the survey and we ranked them, the committee
Oh.
decided to keep it just alphabetical order and not have it ranked and presented
but-
to agencies in that manner.
When we presented it to agencies, But when you presented it to us, it was ranked. I mean, we had a
Correct.
ranked
Correct.
priorities.
Chair Quinones Gabrielian, the survey was done last year to help prioritize, to hear how the community felt the need should be prioritized. And since the feedback was not to necessarily use it as part of the RFP process, staff didn't take the time to do the survey this year because it wasn't necessarily incorporated last year into the way that the RFP was processed and the decisions were made. So all of the program priorities are still the program priorities, but we didn't necessarily give a higher priority to any of the categories based on the RFP that was released, and that wasn't how the awards were, the decisions for the awards were made necessarily. Maybe in your mind
In my mind,
specifically
it
you
was.
used it, but as a
In my
board,
mind,
I don't think you used those priorities, or we didn't hear you using those priorities to award. So that's why we didn't take the time to do the survey this year.
Yeah, I think I verbally said, several times, I was definitely using that ranking to make my recommendations. So it did affect me personally and when I made the recommendations. So, okay, well, as it stands though, we don't have enough input anyway. So it will go out like this. And so may I have a motion to approve staff's recommendation for the CDBG 2024-2025 program priorities?
I move the motion to approve.
Second?
Okay, thank you
Committee
very much.
members Armenian,
Yes.
Yes.
Caribbean,
Yes.
Menuchyan is absent, Vice Chair Avedisian is absent, Chair Quinones Gabrielian.
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay. Next, then.
Next is 4C, fiscal year 2024-2025 CDBG Public Social Services Request for Funding Proposal, RFP packet. And at 1 is motion to approve the fiscal year 2024-2025 CDBG Public Social Services Request for Proposal, RFP packet.
Chair Quinones Gabrielian, members of the advisory committee, we usually don't have a PowerPoint for our RFP packets, but this year we do because we want to present to the committee some updates and changes to the way we are going to release our RFP this year. So as we had stated before, we have about $255,000, which is estimated in public social services funding for 24-25. That will be part of the RFP. This will include the program priorities, which are ranked in alphabetical order. And this year, we are finally moving away from hard copy grant submission process to an online submission system. We're going to be using Zoom grants. Staff had vetted various vendors last year and this year who offer online grant management systems, and we selected Zoom grants. And we selected them to be our web-based provider because they really have a lot of extensive knowledge in CDBG programs, homeless services programs, as well as the home program. And they have been working with federal, state, and local agencies and foundations for years. Now, staff is currently working with Zoom grants, technical support to set up the system and go live by mid-November. That's kind of where we're kind of anticipating. So we go live, and then we're going to be scheduling trainings with our community agencies through our technical support meetings that we have, as well as the advisory committee in the coming months ahead. Now, we are contracted with Zoom grants for 36 months, 3 years, and we'll go through about 2 or 3 grant cycles during this time to properly evaluate the system. And then we'll seek your feedback and feedback from community agencies to see how you feel as end users using this system and whether to continue. Now, the RFP packets will include instructions and the application in the traditional hard copy format. It's Exhibit 1 of your binder. We did red mark all the areas which will be addressed in the transition to Zoom grants online system once it goes live. So when you look at Exhibit 1, you'll see many red marks, and that's just in place because we're still in the process of moving it to the online system. Other updates to the RFP packet. We have policy recommendation updates to the RFP. At your August 28th meeting of the CDBG Advisory Committee, there were policy recommendations that were made to the committee specifically for capital improvement. But the committee had also requested to include 2 of those recommendations to the Public Social Services RFP. And that first one was to disqualify incomplete community agency proposals where an agency fails to properly respond and correct for the weaknesses in their application, which were identified on the strengths and weaknesses analysis. And then also, recommendation number 5 that was made by the committee, agencies must attend the mandatory CDBG technical support meeting as a requirement of submitting a CDBG request for proposal for public social services. These 2 are really good and very important recommendations that are going to be included in the RFP this year. That concludes my presentation. If you have any questions, comments, we'll be more than happy to accept.
Yes, Mr. Caribbean?
Well, very excited to go online. That's less paperwork for you guys as well, saves you time and makes it much more neat and clean. Everything online, I guess you can't go to the next question until you're done with one, right? That's normally the online case. Is there a cost to this?
Yes. There is a cost to this Zoom grants. It is $53,225 for the next 3 years.
Oh, next 3 years, so
For
about
3 years.
18,000 a year. And that's addition to the cost that we take overhead of our initial overhead that we take out, was it 15%, 18%? That's included in there, or is not? It's addition to?
I think Ms. Alexanian has the breakdown for the budget and how we're going to be budgeting it.
Where is that coming out from?
Sorry, committee member Caribbean, what do you mean by the
Where
administration
is it
portion?
coming out from?
It's general funds that are going to be paying for so it won't be CDBG funds because we don't have enough money to
That was
pay
my
for this.
question.
Yes. So the city's general fund will help pay for, our information services department is actually going to cover the cost as part of their budget. Because we don't really have enough CDBG funds to be able to allocate towards this. And the administration portion, if that's what you were referring to in CDBG, that will still be needed by the staff to oversee the entire
In
thing.
addition to that?
The
Or is it
cost will be in
portion of-
addition to that, yes.
In addition to that, okay.
The program itself isn't necessarily going to save any staff time in the sense of, like, the staff still need to review. They'll do exactly the same. If anything, it'll save on printing.
Right.
So the staff time to review and prepare the analysis and monitor the reports, it will all still be done. There's efficiency, don't get me wrong, hours of staff time that takes to assemble and pass out even getting you the actual boxes. So that staff time will definitely be saved, but the percentage of admin that's set aside from the CDBG funds will definitely still be necessary to pay for staff time.
Over the weekend, I went over this very fast. I didn't have enough time to go details, but I noticed some spots, for example, if you have this, you don't qualify or it's not a complete package, does the machine or the app does it automatically, or it's something still goes through for qualification or disqualification purposes?
Of course, those are great questions. The Zoom Grants has not been configured yet. So our understanding is Zoom Grants will have a checklist, which is something that we manually prepared, at this time, just in case we can't go live with Zoom Grants. Our goal is to go live, but we haven't started working because the contract goes into effect October 31st. So we're waiting for that contract to become official so that we can start working with Zoom Grants to configure the system for our use. So we will, the policy requirement where all of your documentation will need to be complete in order for it to be a complete application, that's still something that will be required. And if there are documents that are missing, staff will identify it in a strengths and weakness analysis. And if anything, I think Zoom Grants is going to help agencies because it won't let them get past that screen before they could go to the next screen. So for example, if their 501c3 documentation is required with a paper packet, they might forget to include that. But with the online system, unless they upload it and the system recognizes that that file is attached, hoping it's the right file attached, they won't be able to get to the next screen to be able to input complete the rest of the application. So those will still be requirements that we will expect and implement.
Okay, so throughout the uploading or completing the application, if the agencies need help, they call them?
Us.
They call you,
yes.
not the Zoom grant?
Yes, the agencies, we will conduct training sessions once we are fully familiar with the system and it's been set up. We will have training sessions with the agencies. And of course, this being the first year, if any agencies get stuck with the system or have issues, our staff, Maggie and Tamar, will be their direct contact to be able to work through any kinks that might be. Of course, this being the first year that we go live, we will be flexible. So if we notice that something in the system is not working exactly as it should, we will and have discussed possibly needing to push back timelines to be able to accommodate those, because again, we haven't even seen the system, so we've reviewed it, but we haven't started creating our templates in the system. So if there are any challenges or if there's a need to push back on timelines to address concerns or be able to assist the agencies, we will make for that, but it will be across the board. So if we make an exception for one, it will be for all. So we don't want agencies to wait till the day before to start completing their application so that they're not, finding themselves in a situation where it's 5 p.m. and the application was due at the end of that day, to then use that as an excuse that, hey, I couldn't because the system wasn't working, because they will have, the entire, 2 weeks, 3 weeks to submit it. But if there are challenges, we definitely will be accounting for that.
Very exciting. Anyway, I'm looking forward to it. I think it should make it. I'm sure there will be bugs moving forward, like when we did the weaknesses and all that. Sometimes they did come back, sometimes they didn't. I assume on the online service, you cannot come back. It has to be completed. Things like that, I think should make it easier that we know the complete application should pass all the necessary weaknesses that it's questioned. Thank you.
Yes.
2 questions. Is Zoom grants have anything to do with Zoom, the company?
Not that we're aware of.
No, it's a trademark. Zoom grants, one word, trademarked.
Interesting. Okay. And second, I just want to make sure, of course, in favor of anything that will streamline our processes and help put things in order. But I also am mindful of, there are some organizations, some agencies who have more staff, some who have less staff, some who might be more technologically savvy, some less. Just want to make sure we don't disadvantage someone in this process just because they might be on the side of the spectrum of less staff and less, technological capability in-house. So make sure that they have plenty of opportunities to get trained up in the process and have a lifeline that they can call, phone a friend for help when they're doing this stuff.
Absolutely. Then that is a good point. Some nonprofits do have more capacity than others, and that is definitely something we will keep in mind and assist as much as possible without having to do it all for them. So we will also talk to Zoom grants when we do implement to see if, this being the first year, if we might even accept paper applications and maybe just upload the information ourselves if there are limitations. We can look at that. It's, worst case if, for example, we can't go live in a timely manner to allow everybody to complete their applications online. But those are things that we do have to think about and discuss with Zoom grants as well, or if we will even have the capacity or the ability to do it as staff, because I'm assuming there might be limitations on what we can do because we want the applications to be completed on the agency's end, and for us not to be able to, for security reasons, even be able to modify the applications, so that we might be limited. But these are things we need to discuss in more detail as we start building the templates for Glendale.
Great. Second thing I'll say is all in favor of those. Thank you for considering those recommendations from our last meeting. That'll help make our selection process easier so that we don't have to do the jumping jacks and somersaults we were doing last time to try and give people a shot at getting their applications corrected in real time. I think we should avoid that at all costs because it's not fair to all the other organizations that put in the time, to do it properly. So I support that.
Thank you.
Quickly, since we go through this, are we gonna skip that Excel small fund paperwork or just?
That would be, that is exactly what we were looking at, especially with the ratio calculation tool. We are going to be working with Zoom Grants to see if they can set that up for us, and maybe they could actually do it in the cells within the application. We shall see.
Looking forward to it.
Yeah.
Yes, yeah. Congratulations. So then the timeline is you go live by the end of October?
We're hoping to
November?
go live mid-November because
Mid-November.
that's when we release the RFP. If we can go live mid-November, comfortably go live mid-November and then started on the trainings, because about the end of November, we hold our technical support meetings. We are not going to do it virtually. We're going to do it in person since it's also going to be mandatory to attend, or else you can't even apply for funds. What we'll do is we're going to do demos and hopefully get Zoom Grants maybe on to maybe do a sandbox type training and see. We're really, everything is really up in the air right now until we get the RFP approved and submit it to Zoom Grants so we can start doing the demo.
Okay, and then the mandatory meeting, November 29th. That's
November
all
29th,
tentative.
correct,
And then
it's tentative.
first week of March for the initial meetings of CDBG for
Right.
the interviews.
Now, usually we have the agencies submit their proposals at the end of December. It'll be December 28th this year. But Ms. Alexandra and I have spoken, and we're willing to, if we need to, we're willing to extend it 2 extra weeks to give agencies an opportunity to complete the proposal, learn the system, complete the proposal, for us to learn the system and help them to complete the proposal, but we are giving ourselves 2 weeks leeway.
Good. Very good. May I please have a motion then for alternative 1 as stated by staff? I entertain a motion.
Make a motion to approve the fiscal year 2024-2025 CDBG Public Social Services Request for Proposal RFP packet.
I second it.
Great. Roll call.
Sure. Committee members Armenian,
Yes.
Garibian,
Yes.
Menuchyan's absent, Vice Chair Avedisian's absent, Chair Quinones Gabrielian.
Yes.
Thank you.
Next.
4D, fiscal year 2024-2025 CDBG Capital Improvement Project Request for Proposal, RFP packet. One is a motion to approve the fiscal year 2024-2025 CDBG Capital Improvement Project Request for Proposal, RFP packet.
Chair Quinones, Gabrielian, members of the advisory committee, this is going to be a bit repetitive from our public social services, but there are a few additional recommendations and updates to our capital improvement CIP proposal packet. For capital improvement, we're anticipating $762,583 in funding for community agencies this year. Of course, the Zoom Grants online system that we had just talked about, but we're also including our new updated 5 policy recommendations that were made at the August 28th meeting. The packet also includes the Build America, Buy America BABA Act. We had actually done a report for the committee at the last meeting as well, so we've included this in the packet, and we will introduce this to our community agencies as well. So Zoom Grants, this is basically the same exact slide that we shared with you for public social services. Nothing has changed for capital improvement. It's exactly the same. As for our packets for capital improvement, we're going to have the instructions and application in traditional hard copy format. You'll see that as Exhibit 1. but we have also red marked this packet to address the transition to Zoom grant system. So once it goes live, all of that will be basically transferred to the online system. Some policy recommendation updates to the RFP. The advisory committee approved 5 policy recommendations at the August 28th meeting. The policy recommendations were presented for consideration as part of the proposal submission update. Now again, back to our timeliness expenditure requirements. These policies were put in place as a result of timeliness expenditure requirements and will be incorporated into the CDBG workout plan to be submitted to HUD. So also, even though we're putting together a timeline for HUD in the workout plan regarding how we're going to spend down till August 30th, we're also including the new policy recommendations as well to show HUD a good faith effort in how we will be getting these projects pretty much out of the pipeline. CDBG, the RFP packet refers to each policy recommendation as new policy under its respective section within the packet. So you'll see that as new policy. So we have 5 policies to go over. The first one, again, it's disqualify incomplete community agency proposals where an agency fails to properly respond and correct for the weaknesses in their application, which were identified on the strengths and weaknesses analysis. The second one, agencies cannot be funded for more than 2 CIP projects at one time, can only apply for 1 project at any time in a given program year, and can only submit a proposal for a second capital improvement project if their first funded project is already in construction and will be completed within a year of the application date. Recommendation number 3, proposals must include 1 general contractor estimate that reflects prevailing wage rates, but a minimum of 2 general contractor estimates are strongly recommended. Recommendation number 4, a commitment to the timely completion of CIP projects reflected in the necessary completion of project planning and design phases. The proposal should reflect project readiness and completion or near completion of pre-construction activities, and that the checklist is part of Exhibit F in the packet. And then lastly, agencies must attend a mandatory CDBG technical support meeting as a requirement of submitting a CDBG request for proposal for CIP projects. Any questions on the policy recommendations that were discussed at the August meeting?
Yeah, I have a question regarding recommendation 4. I mean, first of all, let me say generally support all of it, but kind of along the same theme as my previous comment, when I look at number 4, you kind of have to be a professional in the field of construction and a contractor to understand all these things. So if there's an agency that has a little less experience, a little less staff, or even less money to be able to afford to hire an architect, like we often see on some of these bigger projects, what's their recourse? Because doing all the number 4, being able to meet the number 4 requirement, I think would require a more expensive proposal, right? Because they'd have to somehow, well, first they have to find a general contractor to do this work, meaning the proposal work, who then is not qualified to bid on the project, right? Or disqualified, I should say, from bidding on the project. And then after that, they have to go find a contractor to actually help them do it. So I'm just thinking, I'm not saying we should open the floodgates and let everyone do whatever they want, but I just want to try and be as accessible as possible for these funds, for those organizations that are doing good work, may not have the resources to do this preparation. So is there a way we can help them with regard to this?
This is a good question because recommendation number 4 is, I don't want to say subjective, but it is subjective. It is a commitment to timely completion, really. And some projects, you're really comparing apples and oranges. Not every project is exactly the same. Some require very high-level design plans. Others have a plumbing, issue that needs to be taken care of. And I apologize, I said Exhibit F, but it's Exhibit E. What we're asking for is, in Exhibit E, it'll give you a checklist. It'll give the agency a checklist to see where they stand. And this is more like what Chair Quinones-Gabrielian had mentioned with the rankings. It's a way to use this as a tool to see, when you're deciding on $750,000, which agency is more prepared and ready to start the project. I hate to use the word shovel-ready, but shovel-ready to start the project compared to another agency. So it's not a ding, it's more of a way to evaluate where they stand and how committed they are to this project, because this is where our 7-year period of performance problems come to play. This is where our workout plan comes to play, where we can't meet deadlines, because we want to be able to be accessible to these agencies, but we also need them to have a draftsperson. It doesn't necessarily have to be, and I know Ms. Kabanjan has worked with the Campbell Center. The Campbell Center doesn't have an architect, but they do have a draftsperson. And that's okay. So when someone comes in with a draftsperson versus an architect, we're not dinging them for that. We're just reflecting the fact that they've already started some sort of process. Now, it really is up to the committee at the end of the day, because it is a commitment that's subjective. Hope that answers the question.
Yeah, I mean, I guess staff is going to have to use their judgment on your confidence level. If an organization doesn't have an architect, isn't kind of coming through with every single part of this, but it still seems like a shovel-ready, worthwhile project on what to present to committee at the end of the day. I mean, you're the first filter on these things, because we are asking for more rigor. So I appreciate that the staff is being responsive to that request for more rigor. At the same time, I'm always worried a little bit that, let's say it's a kitchen remodel, right, in a domestic violence shelter. You don't necessarily need an architect for that, right? You could probably get someone who could just say, we're going to replace the cabinets and some of the plumbing. So you don't necessarily need every single one of these that's in this Exhibit E, as long as staff is matching the requirement with the complexity of the proposed idea. Because there may be some ideas that are still worthwhile, they're not that complex, they don't need this level of rigor on every single thing. In other words, they have a good chance of success.
Right. Although I do agree that it can be subjective, right? There are some things in there that are pretty cut and dry. Do you have your permits? Yes, no. Plan check? Yes, no. Construction bids? Yes, no. So, I mean, it will definitely, I think, help it. But you're right. When we have two important projects and they're both in the gray area, that's where the subjectivity comes in.
And truthfully, we will be presenting the committee again with a strengths and weaknesses analysis. And usually those strengths and weaknesses analysis we only really delve into what we feel is maybe a HUD regulation that's, and we bring that to your attention and to the attention of the agency. But again, this is subjective, and it really is a good tool to use when you are trying to figure out where we stand on what to fund at that particular year, and where we are.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Garibia.
Yes, thank you. Initially, obviously, I love it. These recommendations are great. We discussed it in details last time. I'm going on number 2, which we discussed it again back then. When it says, again, I'm thinking the agency's point of view and sometimes the project point of view. It could be only apply for one project. So if I have a project and I'm remodeling the entire building from stud up, is that one project? That means kitchen, bathrooms, plumbing, electric, start up, I'm gonna tear down the building. That's considered one project?
It would be considered one project if it's the total project budget that you're going to be submitting as an
Okay.
agency, yeah.
So it's not necessarily project of, so in some cases divides to two parts. I need to have the ramp fixed before I can go inside. Now, is that two projects? You know what I'm saying? Sometimes the projects work simultaneously. One has to be done for the other. You don't want to fund them the ramp and then the waiting area next year. I want to do the waiting area, but I can't do it until I do the ramp outside. So is that one project or two projects? So these are the fine things that I guess when it comes to applying, depending what it is, are we flexible in that aspect? Or just say, oh, you have two bids, so it's two, period, don't talk to me anymore. How do we adjust to this?
Truthfully, committee member, Garibian, members of the advisory committee, from what we've presented to you in the past year and a half regarding these estimates that keep coming in at $1 million plus, we're anticipating that agencies are going to be more realistic in what they ask for, because they will have to leverage funding along with what they're asking for. And I'm hoping that will alleviate the question that you have. What are they asking for?
Maybe
And-
more specific that we passed, that anyone's gonna do the solar project, they have to give us roof certificate. And if not, they have to do the roof. Now, is that two projects, one for the solar, one for the roof? Because you're not gonna say, do the roof this year, come back next year for solar.
Chair Quinones Gabriel and members of the committee, Member Garibian. The direction we got at the last meeting from the committee was that they can't apply for more than one project at a time. And so that means that if they want to apply for a roof and a solar panel on a roof, and the roof requires some work, they're going to have to combine those two into one project. So it's going to be a roof renovation with solar panel addition. So they can't submit them as two separate projects. They're going to have to combine them together. If they want just the solar panel funded by the committee, then they're going to have to wait till they're done with their roof project and come back and apply for that in the following year. The reason unless this committee wants to make an exception for those types of projects, because I think that was direction that you gave us at the last meeting, where they shouldn't apply for more than one project at a time. So in that type of a situation, I would urge the agency to get started on their roof project. If they know they're going to want to do solar on the roof, at least start the roof project and apply for the solar funding while the roof project is happening, so that by the time they finish their roof renovation, they get funding to add the solar on top. Or they need to just keep in mind that if they don't get funded and it's still a priority for them because it's such a high need project, then they're going to need to fund it on their own, or just pull that piece off if they don't get funded. So unfortunately, I know the scenario that you just provided as an example probably makes it a little more complicated for an agency that might want to do solar if they could get CDBG funding, but if they don't, then they're not going to do it. But I think they're going to have to structure their projects where it's some sort of a bid alternate. So if they're able to secure the funding, they add the bid alternate. If not, then they just will do their roof project and not apply. Or the other way around, they apply for the roof project for CDBG funds and fund themselves for the solar. But either way, if they want to do both, they're going to have to submit it as one project, because they can't separate them in the same fiscal year to apply for two different projects.
So excellent, same thing that we initially said, from remodeling the house, stud down to studs, that's one project. So it's technical word of project, how you actually submit the application. It could be multiple projects, but under umbrella of one project. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions? Then may I entertain a motion to approve staff's recommendation?
I'll motion to pass.
Okay. Move 2024-2025 CDBG Capital Improvement Project Request for Proposal Packet. Is there a second?
Second?
All right. Roll call, please.
Committee members Armenian,
Yes.
Caribbean,
Yes.
Menuchyan is absent, Vice Chair Avedisian is absent, Chair Quinones Gabrielian.
Yes.
Thank you.
Next, please.
Sure, 4E is CDBG CARES Act reprogramming undesignated fund balance. At 1 is a motion to approve the issuance of an RFP to reprogram $169,290.27 in undesignated fund balance from CDBG CARES Act funding to city and community agencies.
Chair Quinones, Gabrielian, members of the advisory committee, I know we've been discussing fiscal year 24-25 entitlement funds, but we would like you to redirect your attention to our CARES Act. We still have some funding left in CARES Act, and we wanted to bring that forth to the committee regarding reprogramming of undesignated fund balance in the CARES Act. The recommendation is $169,290 is still available in CARES Act funds to be reprogrammed to city and community agencies. Just as a background, the CARES Act funds must have a PPR tieback. This PPR tieback is important. It's a prevention, preparation, or response to coronavirus. So anything that we fund must have a PPR tieback. CDBG CV funding must meet a HUD national objective, so that is still in effect just like our regular entitlement funds. The only difference with CARES Act funds is the public social services cap of 15% is lifted in CARES Act funds. So we can fund 100% of the remaining funds to public social services projects as long as they have a PPR tieback. So just as a kind of a historical, CARES Act funding that was received by the City of Glendale was in 3 rounds. In round 1, we got $1.1 million. Round 2 went straight to the states, so we had 0. And then in round 3, we had $1.6 million in CARES Act funding for the city. Once the pandemic hit in June of 2020, we funded 3 projects: Emergency Rental Assistance Program, Small Business Grant Program, and the Senior Nutrition Services Program. These 3 programs helped during the pandemic with people who were not working, not able to pay their rental assistance, and helping small businesses with about $5,000. The Emergency Rental Assistance Program has a balance of $1,875 still left on the books. The Small Business Grant Program returned what they had left of their funding, which was $257,500, and that was reprogrammed to the Senior Nutrition Services Program. Now, with the Senior Nutrition Services Program, in 2020, it was originally funded at $30,000 to purchase cooling fans for seniors and meal equipment for the facility, and that was fully expended. And then in January of 2022, when the Small Business Grant Program returned $257,000 in funds, they went to the Senior Nutrition Program. So this program could conduct a post-pandemic senior needs assessment to determine needs of seniors. And this is currently ongoing. This is what we're doing right now in the process. Also providing gap funding to serve additional senior meals through June 30th of 2026. We are noticing that senior nutrition, seniors are back in person through the congregate meal program, but our home-delivered meal program, usually better known as Meals on Wheels, we see a good 25-30% increase in that need. A lot of homebound seniors now post-pandemic. For CDBG CV3 Round 3 funds, we had originally in December of 2020 set aside $950,000 for the Education Connection Program. This is when the children were yet to go back to school. They were still doing online. The Education Connection Program returned $475,000, and we reprogrammed that to our community agencies. We currently have a balance of $530 that we can, that's part of the undesignated fund balance. $608,000 was also returned. We were initially entertaining a medical point of dispensing. We wanted to do an MPOD project where people would come in and get the COVID-19 vaccine. That didn't work out due to the HUD objective of low to moderate income, and it had to be situated in a certain place. And then lastly, we reserved $57,000 for program administration. So those return funds gave about $1 million to 12 community agencies, and we had funding for them from July 1st, 2021 through June 30th, 2022. $916,000 was expended by these programs that provided COVID relief assistance. Currently, there's $166,884 balance remaining, and that could be reprogrammed again. So in all, we have about $2,790,000 in total CDBG CARES Act funding that was awarded to the city of Glendale. We had to expend 80% of that by July 16th of 2023, and the goal was met. 100% of the CARES Act has to be expended by July 16th of 2026. And the city of Glendale has so far expended 85% of the total CARES Act funds to date, totaling $2.1 million. Right now, we have a balance of $169,290 that's available for reprogramming. The $166,000 comes from the community agencies that return funds or left funds on the books. $1,875 from our rental assistance program, and then the $530 left over from the Education Connection program. So how we looked at how to fund, again, PPR tieback is the most important. We've been doing a lot of workshops and webinars through HUD, and that's the most important thing, using best practices and consideration of CARES Act funds. Always think of the PPR tieback and the timeline for expenditure, because the money will go away in 2026. So we got some input from our local service providers to identify current needs regarding PPR. And we've had conversations with our community partners. We had an AARP roundtable recently, workshops like I had mentioned, and our Glendale Continuum of Care as well. And then we saw needs of our CDBG recipients. We came up with a recommendation for reprogramming to fulfill the PPR tieback for HUD compliance. The number one response at this time is food pantry assistance type programs. And we have two. We have the city's elderly nutrition program, and then we have community agencies who are currently funded and are currently providing food assistance programs. Staff is recommending 4 areas. City of Glendale's Elderly Nutrition Program, which serves seniors 60 years and older a hot meal every day of the week, to program $49,290 for that program. The Armenian Relief Society to get $40,000 in food pantry assistance, which they provide to older adults. Catholic Charities of Los Angeles, $40,000. They have a homeless prevention food pantry assistance program. And then the Salvation Army of Glendale, $40,000 to provide food pantry assistance to extremely low and low-income Glendale residents. We did reach out to a 4th agency, which was Door of Hope, and they felt that they don't really provide food assistance programs. They help their women and children fleeing domestic violence, and they have food cards that they give to them. And they felt that the $40,000 could be better used. It was actually going to be $30,000, could be better used to help the agencies that provide that type of service. So they said, no, thank you, and declined. So all 3 of these agencies would be quite willing to take the $40,000 and use those funds. So to give you a reprogramming timeline, if approved today to allocate the funds, we would go to our City Council and Housing Authority in November, and we would have to submit a substantial amendment to the 2019-20 action plan. to accept the $169,000. Now, in December, there's only a 5-day public comment period for CARES Act. For regular entitlement, it's 30 days, but because CARES Act was an emergency type act that they had, they reduced it to 5 days. And then we would execute contracts and begin the program year on January 1st, 2024. We would allow for 18 months, so January 1st, 2024 through June 30th, 2025 would be the contract period for those 3 agencies if the committee decides to recommend funding to them. That concludes my report. If you have any questions.
Question? I think you have-
No, I'm good, except I just want to say the recommendation of the 40,000, I think that's rightfully so, the way I see it. It looks okay.
Any comments or questions?
No, I support the staff's recommendations. I think all those programs have good track records in terms of the addressing food insecurity in our city, so 100% support.
Very good. May I have a motion then for approval?
I can do this one. Motion to approve the issuance of an RFP to reprogram $169,290.27 in undesignated fund balance from CDBG CARES Act funding to city and community agencies as recommended by staff.
Committee member Armenian, there's no RFP. This would be a contract directly for them.
Oh,
Oh, that's
what it says in here.
That's what the
It does?
alternative says.
I just read what you
That would
wrote.
be- Apologies.
Okay, so
That is a
I'll
mistake.
I'll rephrase
Into
my
a
motion.
contract.
Enter into a contract, yes.
Yes.
Sorry.
There you go.
With the 4 agencies that staff recommends, which include City of Glendale Elderly Nutrition Program for $49,290.27, Armenian Relief Society, $40,000, Catholic Charities of Los Angeles, $40,000, and Salvation Army of Glendale and Burbank, $40,000 for use with low-income Glendale residents.
Thank you.
I second that.
Thank you. Roll call, please.
Committee members Armenian,
Yes.
Garibian,
Yes.
Manukian is absent, Vice Chair Avedissian is absent, Chair Quinones Gabrielian.
Yes. Okay, well, that was great.
Item
Thank
5
you.
is committee staff comments.
Yes, thank you. Committee and staff comments from my colleagues first.
And just thank you for all the preparation that went into this meeting. I know there's a lot of work being done here, but I'm particularly excited by the upcoming process that we'll be going through and the additional recommendations I think being incorporated will help make it a better process for everyone. So appreciate all the work.
Thank you. Mr. Garibian?
Yes, thank you, staff. Great job as always. We can always count on you guys to give us the perfect, detailed information. I'm very excited for going online, so hopefully that's going to change stuff in a better way, I hope so. So thank you, and thank you. Oh, I think we have a birthday today. Don't we have a birthday today?
Yes, on Friday.
On Friday. Well, happy birthday to our
Thank
chair.
you.
So just
Thank
want to
you
wish
very
you
much.
happy
Thank
birthday
you.
as well.
All right, well, I also want to, well, thank you for all your good wishes, but I also want to thank staff. It's very apparent that it took a long time for this to be a 1 hour and 46-minute meeting. We approved a ton of work, so thank you very much. And now I turn it over to staff for your comments.
Just thank you guys for your time. And of course to Maggie and Tamar for always doing a great job with preparing the reports. So we hope for a successful RFP process. See you guys next year.
Yes, that's right. Okay, well then, thanks again. We are adjourned. Thank you, everybody.